Hi guys, thank you for stopping by at Building Wealth with Rajiv. Do you feel lack of purpose in your life? Do you feel that you're missing that spark within you? Are you burnt out? Then listening to this chat with Simon may help you. Simon has recently written a bestseller book, Energize, Make the Most of Every Moment. I put the link below, you can check the book out. For such meaningful discussions, please follow me. Simon, thank you so much. And apologies, I had to postpone once, but finally you are here.
Rajiv, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. All right, Simon, the book, you know, it's doing good, I guess, and it's one of the best sellers. I just, before this interview, I read some of the reviews as well. How are you feeling about your book now?
I am very much enjoying the journey, Rajiv. I went into the book journey with no expectations. In fact, getting a book deal with Penguin, the world's largest publishing house, and then getting endorsements from the likes of New York Times bestselling authors Simon Sinek, Marie Forleo, Dr. Marshall Goldsmith, for me, that was already a dream come true. So whatever happened after the book got published, I was already happy. And lots of things did happen. I've had the opportunity to speak at festivals, at conferences, both here in the UK and abroad. And it has opened doors that I had never imagined before the book was published. So, in a nutshell, I'm very much enjoying the journey so far, Rajiv.
Oh, that's amazing. And tell me one thing. I think there's a couple of podcasts I heard, and you talked about learning, yeah, iterative learning. You talked about
Mm.
journey, iterative learning, learn, and then see what you did right, what you did wrong. So let's talk about your book. What you did right, what you did wrong. What did you learn out of it?
Sure. So, at a broad level, when I think about learning, we want to be constantly better than who we were yesterday, such that when people ask us how we are, we can say, we're just getting started. We're just getting started. And that's because there is so much to learn. The world is moving, the world is changing. We have to adapt as well. And we can only adapt when we learn. So when I look back at the book journey, what went well? Well, I very much enjoyed the marketing and PR of the book. I'm a creative mind, and so I really enjoyed getting the book out to the market. I love the writing process. For me, it was beautiful to pause, reflect, and to download my thoughts onto paper so I could share that with the audience. What was not so good that I can learn from? Well, I think now that I've written my first book, when I write my second book, I think my writing would be a lot better because I'd never written something of this length before. It was not only a challenge, but it was a learning process to understand how to write a book, how to research a book, how to structure a book, and how to write it in a way that was engaging. So I think the lesson is from writing and editing, lessons that I can take forward for my next project.
But is the content part you're okay by and large? If you today, if you sit and you say, okay, I write the book, Energize again, the content will be by and large same, or will there be some improvements, or you'll think about concepts differently?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think there are certainly lessons that I can take if I were to write it again. So, for example, I imagine, and of course, I had never written a book before, I'd imagined that when I sit down, I would go straight into writing. But of course, in hindsight, now I know it's like managing a project. You can't just start writing. You've got to do the research. You've got to think about the structure. What are the chapter headings? What are the parts of the book you want to lay out? What is the journey going to look like for the reader? And then you start writing. So I think if I were to do it again, I would create a little more structure and order to how I write the book. But of course, at the same time, I don't regret the experience because the reason I don't regret it is because I wrote the book during COVID. I also became a father for the first time at the moment I received a offer from Penguin. And so I think that I wrote the book as it was because of what I went through at the time. If I did it again, it might be a very different book because we write the book based on how we are in the moment. And so in hindsight, I think whatever happened happened the way it did in order to create the book that people are reading now.
You have a lot of emphasis on in the moment, right? I mean, I saw your past interviews also. I think you talk a lot about in the moment. I mean,
Hmm.
when I think one of the interviewer asked a question that what's my purpose in my life, and you said in the moment you think what are you curious about, and
Definitely. I think because we forget that life is happening now in the moment. And what happens is that so many of us end up living this tragic scenario of living as if we are never going to die and then dying having never really lived. So on the one hand, it is important to have a vision. Knowing what you are working towards gives you context for today's actions. But then you want to put that to one side and focus on this moment now, today. What can you do now in order to take steps forward towards that vision? And for me, that's where the fun begins. If we are living in the past or we are living in the future, then we're not taking action in the present. And nobody can predict the future. You know, for businesses just starting in the beginning of 2020, I don't know anybody who had put into their business plan a plan B for when the global pandemic struck a few months later. That tells us that our business plan has to constantly be evolving. We have to be in a constant state of adaptation. And we can only do that when we are living in the present moment. When we ground ourselves in the now, we actually amplify our awareness. We can see what's changing. We can see how we can adapt. And we can see what is most important now to focus on. Otherwise, we get caught up in the future and we're living for something that may or may not happen. But if we can focus on what can I do today? What am I curious about right now? And just take one step forward each day, that compounds. That compounds into the feeling of momentum. And once you have that feeling of momentum, guess what? Lots of things start to come into your radar that maybe you were not open to in the past.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And I kind of agree with you. I mean, I've worked a lot on trying to be living in present. I mean, I had a coach also who helped me practicing mindfulness. I haven't got really extremely good at it, but I'm better than what I was a year ago. And it's a journey. It's not easy, but it's a journey. Tell me, Simon, how did this concept of energize come in? What's the roots? How did you coin this term? I mean, energy is. When I was typing at Chat GPT before we chat, and I chatted. I'm talking to a energy guru, and what should I ask? And then the questions came. Oh, the energy in Soviet Union, energy in US. The energy companies it started coming in. So energy is a word, but energize. Like how? I think I'm sure it's not an override thing.
No, so when I first put the proposal forward to the publishers, my working title was originally Energy is Everything. And then as we edited and as we started to write the book, we condensed that title to one word, energize. Now, when I came up with the idea of what to put into my book, there were two factors that contributed to the title. The first was that I went through a period of my life, Rajiv, where I had no energy. I was completely burnt out. I had zero physical, mental, emotional, spiritual energy. I was in fact lost because I had begun on a career which I thought would make me successful. But actually, it made me hate what I did. It made me feel empty. I didn't feel fulfilled. I mean, on the outside, it looks like I was doing quite well. I was in an industry that paid very well, but yet I felt there was something missing, as if I was made to do more than just sit in front of a computer all day. And so going from that position of my life to where I now am today, I am waking up every day energized with the feeling of possibilities over limitations, energized by what can be rather than what can't. And I really wanted to detail that journey. How did I go from this point of my life where I was exhausted and drained in every way to now waking up feeling energized every single day? And the second factor was I would often come down from the stage when I spoke to audiences, and there would be a line of people, many of which who would say to me, Simon, I loved your energy up on stage. It was infectious, and I was just drawn to what you were saying. If I could only have a small percentage of the energy that you have, I could go on and do so much with my life. And so I really wanted to speak to that as well. How could people activate their own energy so that they can accomplish some of the things that they have been putting off for months or years to finally start living the life that they were meant for?
No, I think, look, it's, I'll come to some follow-up questions, but I just want to kind of tell you one thing. When I sent you a LinkedIn request, um, and I have about 6,000 people I'm connected to, you're the only one who left a voicemail. I had no fucking clue that somebody can leave a voicemail. LinkedIn is not used for that, right? We have WhatsApp and all that. Like, and your voice was like buzzing, you know. Thanks for connecting, Rajiv, and obviously a British accent, yeah. And so, yeah, that left an impact on me, and I don't know what, you know. And
Mm.
I just I felt extremely good about somebody responding to my invite that way. I just wanted to
Mm.
highlight that to you while we are chatting. I think I didn't say it that time, but it was.
Thank
I
you.
mean, that's the
Thank
only
you.
voice message I've got so far from 6,000 contacts still to this day.
And I think, and I think you sharing that, it reminds me of this Maya Angelou quote. She said, "People will forget what you said, they will forget what you did, but they will never forget the way you made them feel." And the thing is with voice is that it carries energy. When you send somebody a voice note or you pick up the phone and you call someone, when they hear your voice, they feel your energy, because through our voice, we communicate emotion. And emotion is nothing more than energy in motion.
Yeah. But how did the whole thing start for you? Like, how did you start feeling about the concept? What was your journey which was pivotal and which came up, you know, the journey which kind of funneled you into this?
Sure. So I think the catalyst was the global financial crisis of 2008. Up until that point, I had gone to a good university. I had started in a reputable company. And then the financial crisis happened. I was redundant. I would still move within the financial industry for nearly 10 years, in and out of jobs. But that catalyst of the crisis would start a process of thinking in my head of wanting to work for myself, ultimately wanting to have impact in the world. I just didn't know what that was at the time. And following my curiosities, I landed at what I now get to do today, which is coaching, speaking, and writing. But when I think about it from an energy perspective, and just to put this into context, when I think about energy, I see it in four dimensions. So we have the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual. Now, for me, the first place that I began was with my physical energy, because the job I was in was sucking me dry of energy. I did not get enough sleep. I was surviving on takeaway food and junk food, and I got little in the way of exercise. So as I started to address my physical energy, I got more sleep. I went to do a workout at least 3 to 4 times a week, and I changed my diet. I began to notice significant changes in how I felt. And for anyone who tries to go to the gym or tries to do some exercise, you will know that there will be some days where you just don't want to do it. You wake up some mornings and you're like, I don't want to go to the gym today. But I guarantee you, after you have done a workout, you never regret the fact that you
Feel
moved
different.
your body. Yeah, you feel completely different. So what happened is, as I started to elevate my energetic state by addressing my physical energy, it got me thinking, at this level of energy, how can I channel it in a way that would lead to a fulfilling life? And for me, that led to a process of responsibility and commitment, because I have very quickly learned that life truly begins when you take responsibility for where you are and where you want to be. And on the commitment side, unless you commit, a path cannot emerge, because only in the point of commitment does your brain go, great, you've committed. How are we going to do it? And your brain moves towards an action-oriented place. Whereas if you're only interested in doing something, you're not actually going to do it, because internally, you've not made a decision. You're 50-50. Whereas if you've committed, you've decided this will happen. And now you've got a channel to focus your energy towards.
Yeah. So I think a couple of things. Going back to a bit of your leadership, your coaching practice, Simon. So is there a framework you follow, which is Energize framework you call it, or how do you kind of I come to you and I say, someone help me. I'm not happy. You know, actually I'm okay, but just it's a
Yeah.
hypothetical case.
So if you were to come to me and say you are not happy, the first thing I would do is I would want to understand your world first.
Okay.
Because in coaching, it's not about me telling you what to do. That's more mentorship. In coaching, the first step is to really understand your world. And we all have different internal landscapes. So the first step is to understand your world. The next is to create the space for magic to happen. Because very often, the reason why people can't address challenges or move forward towards their goals is because they just have too much in their calendar. They don't have the space to reflect. They don't have the space to make significant changes that will create that momentum they require. And so first step, if someone came to me and said, I'm not happy, well, the first thing I would ask them is, where does that feeling of unhappiness come from? And that will open up a conversation. Now, they might say, I'm not feeling particularly happy, and I feel that unhappiness comes from my job. And the fact that I don't feel like I'm going somewhere. I don't feel like I'm moving towards where I want to be. Now, then my next question might be, well, tell me, what is that place that you want to be? Now, of course, everybody has a different place. What is a goal for one person will be different to another person. Now, he or she might say, well, my long-term goal is to do X. And then I might question, well, what have you done so far in order to find out if X is what you want to do? So now what we're doing here is we're understanding what ground zero is. We all have to know, where are we standing right now? There's no point making progress if you don't know your reality in the moment. So once we know where are you today, we can then understand what's required to take steps towards a vision. Now, when we do take those steps, we also have to understand that there is no perfect map. None of us are given a map that tells us to go from A to B, this is how you do it. Because of course, life will throw you curveballs. There will be some unexpected challenges and setbacks and obstacles. So when we start to understand what is the path, the key is not to stick to that path rigidly, but is to take small steps forward each day, because that path can change. But also, the more steps you take, the more that map begins to unravel. And the first place, as I said, is knowing what that destination is. Second, making space in your calendar so you can protect your energy. We all have energy, but often we drain it by doing things that take energy away from us. So for me, it's then awareness. What are the things that drain you of energy? And what are the things that give you energy? And where are you spending most of your time right now? For a lot of us, we are spending too much time doing the things that are draining us of energy. So if we start to redress the balance and focus more on the things that give us energy, we start to create a powerful foundation and springboard for us to build on.
So I think the concept of managing energy or time, I think they're different. The time is a different
They
variable, right?
are they are different, but they're interrelated. So to give an example, to master our time, we must be able to master our energy. They are interrelated, because if you only focus on time management, you are assuming that your energy is constant throughout the whole day. So if I was managing my time for a particular day, I might go, okay, I'm going to block out 2 hours for this. I'm going to block out 1 hour for this, and I'm going to block out 30 minutes for this activity. But if you don't regard your energy, then the hours you block out might be the period of the day where you are at your lowest level of energy. So there's no point putting into your diary, I'm going to do this at this time, if deep down, you know that period of the day is where you have the least amount of energy. So once you have an insight and awareness as to your own energetic rhythms, some of us are early risers, some of us are night owls, we work better in the evenings. Once you have insight and data as to how your energetic rhythms work throughout the day, you can then build your routine around those insights.
Yeah, I think so. It's clearly so. I think is it uh, you know typical the traditional or conventional way is one way fits all, right? You wake up in morning, you do this, do this, do this, and by the time this, I think that doesn't really care about the concept of energy. And
Mm.
personally, I work much better when it dawns,
Mm.
and that I've seen some people working in morning, so I think it's pretty much personality centric, isn't it?
Definitely. And that's why I'm a believer that you cannot have self-development without self-awareness, because you cannot change what you're not aware of. And so that's why an activity such as journaling can be very useful to understand how you work best. Now, again, when you've got that insight, when you've got that awareness, you can begin to work with your body and not against it.
Yeah. No, I think makes sense. So, very dated question, Simon, but it's important. And uh, they said that I kind of work in kind of consulting environment with several companies. Purpose is becoming important to companies now. These goddamn companies have been existing for hundreds of years. Now they're talking about purpose. Or purpose.
Mm.
We want to be purposeful brands. We want to be purposeful companies. So
Mm.
the whole concept of purpose has come into picture. I've seen my daughter talking about purpose. She's 16. So so what? So passion leads to purpose. Is that? Can I say that?
Sure. So I think it depends on the context of how you're referring to purpose. So when we think about organizations or teams, the thing about purpose is that the leader or the leadership team must know their own purpose first before they can articulate the purpose of the company. Because if you don't know your own purpose, how does your purpose fit with the wider landscape of the company's vision? People won't connect with it. People would just feel cynical. They'll be like, oh, you've chosen this purpose because we have to choose a purpose. But if people can see that the leader or the leadership team knows what they stand for, and therefore the purpose they are articulating is an extension of who they are, people buy into it a lot easier. It's like the saying that goes, facts tell, stories sell. And the reason why so many of us want to know what our purpose is, whether it's our own personal purpose or our company's purpose or our team's purpose, is because they are all about story. And stories have a unique way of bringing together people behind that common vision, not only internally, but also externally.
So, quick question on you. I think. Have you found your purpose, Simon?
I feel I have, but I'm also open to the fact that purpose can change. I'll give you an example, Rajiv. Before I became a parent, I had an idea of what my purpose was. Once I became a parent, of course, my purpose changed a little bit. So I think that that can evolve over time as you take steps towards achieving certain goals. But I think what does not change is your values. Your values will remain the same because your values build who you are, but your purpose may change because, of course, there will be different influences in your life. So, for example, someone might have a certain purpose, and for whatever reason, they've suddenly lost someone close to them. It could have been a family member or a close friend. And now they've experienced grief. That changes their purpose. So I think purpose can change over time, but it begins with understanding what are my values. My purpose may change, but my values are what makes me the person I am. And so it's being open about that. But I think as long as we have some clarity as to what is most important and what we are working towards, that creates almost a magnetic pull forwards towards making that a reality.
Yeah, I think I think I kind of resonate with it in several sense
Mm.
because life stages make purpose slightly different, but they
Mm.
remain aligned to your value system, and I've seen that personally in myself as well. Now, Simon, when you coach so many people, right? So many C-level, or
Mm.
now I think people are You've been kind enough to kind of open your mentorship or your coaching to anybody comes and you're talking in one of the interviews with Ali Abdul. What is the common thing you find among people you're coaching, like, or the points, the peak points, the bottom points? I mean, what looks
Mm.
common to you?
Sure. So first of all, everyone comes with different hopes, dreams, and challenges.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say one of the most common things that I've noticed in the people I work with is a lack of trust with themselves.
Okay.
So the fact is we all have ideas. You know, you and I will wake up one morning, we're full of ideas, or we go on holiday and we've got lots of insights as to things we want to do. So coming up with an idea, having a goal is the easy part. You know, you ask someone, what do you want to achieve in life? We can all talk about that. However, it's actually taking the action to make those things happen. And what tends to stop us taking action is our own mind. It's the voice in our head that is speaking to us, saying, can you do that? I'm not sure you can do that. It's too competitive out there. I don't know if you got the tools to survive. You have too many obligations. It's too late. You're too young. You're too old. And so actually what happens is that we sabotage our own progress. We sabotage our own commitment because we lack that trust in ourselves. And it is why I often say that there are always two sales that occur. The second is selling you to others, and the first is selling you to you. And until you can sell you to you, the second will always remain the challenge. You have got to be your own cheerleader first before you can go out in the world and sell your ideas, your products, or your services, because people will feel that. It's an energetic exchange. When you go on stage, when you go and speak to people about what you do and why you do it, can they connect with your message? They can't if you don't even connect with your own message. So I think it's that level of trust that has to be built with themselves. And that can sometimes stem from insecurities.
So how to build that level of trust? It's simple. I'll just give you one example. As I said, that I moved to a startup with some friends, lovely friends, and I'm doing sales, right? And I think we're getting good traction. And I kind of I'm under stress, right? Whether it will work out, whether it will not work out. And my partners will hear this interview. They'll come back, but they have more faith in me than I have in myself. But until something I see the tangible sales coming in, the anxiousness will remain in me. So I don't know what to do, how to live with it.
Sure.
It's tough for me at times.
Sure. Well, the first thing to say is a little bit of anxiousness, Rajiv, is good, because a little bit of anxiousness tells you that this is important to me. This is important that I do well in it. So a little bit of anxiousness is good, but you don't want too much. And especially when you are doing a job like sales, often we can get so caught up in the outcome that we don't find the joy in the process. And so what we actually want to do is to gamify the experience so that we make the process, the habits, and what we're doing day to day, the focus and not the outcome. Because if you get the right system and foundation of habits in place, you set yourself up to win again and again and again, such that if you don't get that next sale, you don't care, because you know there is going to be more sales. There was a great saying by the football manager, Sir Alex Ferguson, and he was asked in an interview, he said, do you focus on how many trophies you want to win at the end of the season for your football club? And he said, it is great to win some trophies. Don't get me wrong. It's an amazing experience to win trophies, but I'm not focused on that. I'm focused on how well my team is performing now. Are they eating right? Are they showing up on the pitch right? Are they playing as a team? Are they learning? Are they improving? Because if they can look in the mirror at the end of each day and they can say, today I have given it my best. If they can honestly look in the mirror and say that, by the end of the season, I have no doubt that the rewards will look after themselves. So what he was basically telling is that when we make the progress, the process, and the journey the focus, the rewards will come.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with it, Simon. But it's easier said than done sometimes. The outcome, especially in the corporate world. Simon, you've been part of it. The results, quarterly, monthly numbers, this, that. I'm not talking about my job, but I'm talking about the jobs which I have done. So it gets very difficult to take your eyes from the goal or from the end outcome.
Definitely. And I think this is where those at the senior positions within a company are responsible for creating the culture that either makes or breaks a company. So for me, when we've grown up in traditional forms of leadership, it has typically been exclusively about your performance. So how many sales did you get? Did you hit this target? Did you not hit this target? Did your idea work? Did it not work? Now, the problem is if you have a company that is focused exclusively on a performance-driven culture, it can create fear. It can create fear within a company, because what motivation does an employee have to put forward an innovative idea that is different if they fear that if it fails, they're not going to be looked great upon? They're going to get a black mark against their name because the idea didn't work out. So I think when we look at today's world, in order for a company to be innovative, adaptable, and creative, we have to balance that performance-driven culture with a growth-centric culture. Now, with a growth-centric culture, it's the leader saying, I want you to try new ideas. I want you to share things that we've not done before. I want you to get things wrong, because it is not whether you get it wrong or right that matters. It's how you learn from it. This is where growth-centric culture can be so powerful. So when something doesn't work out, a leader says, okay, this didn't work. What did you learn? How are you going to apply the lessons going forward? Because when you add in a growth-centric culture, guess what? You're developing your people. You're making them better workers. And what happens is they move faster in seeing what works and what doesn't. And so I think it's important to blend a performance-driven culture with elements of a growth-centric framework.
No, I'm with you on that, and I think the reality, and especially Simon, you coach the C levels, you would have very much open. You would be seeing how it's Google, Meta, Microsoft, the layoffs are happening, and they happen in such an insensitive way. As some of my friends laid off, somebody's on a video call and suddenly the video call stops working. And 5 minutes, 10 minutes later, you find out that you're out of the damn job. So I think theory, and I think, and this is leading to a lot of further stress and disillusionment in the existing system.
And I think that is one of the biggest challenges for fast-growing companies, Rajiv, is when you start a company, you might have, let's say, 7 people in a very small startup. Now, what happens is when a company scales, the two things that managers tend to focus on first when we think about growth is revenue growth and headcount growth. So we want to grow our headcount and we want to grow our revenues. So as we grow from 7 people to, let's say, 70 people to 700 people, now how you work together will be very different. The dynamic will, of course, be very different between 700 people internationally than 7 people sitting in the same room. The one part that many companies forget to scale is their culture.
Yeah.
How can we scale culture in the same way that we scale headcount and revenue? Because if you can scale culture well, guess what? You have the same values enshrined in a team of 700 as you do for 7. But few people spend time on working out how to scale culture.
Any success story you're proud of? Simon, you've been coaching so many people. Any success story which appeal to you? Look, I mean, I work with so many clients as well, corporate clients, and I see, I said this, they implemented this, and the brand looked different, But in terms of humans, people, do you have any story to tell me?
Sure. First of all, I'm going to respond in a very diplomatic way and say that every client I work with or every opportunity I have to speak in an organization, for me, has been incredible because everybody has different journeys. They move at different speeds, and simply to see their transformation has been a massive reward and blessing to me. Now, if I had to pick a particular story, I think there are a couple that come to mind, but the one I would share is how somebody who had gone through a lot of trauma in their personal life and exited the business was able to transform her life into one where she was invited by the United Nations to speak. She ended up writing multiple books, and she ended up starting multiple new businesses. For me, that was inspiring because having seen and heard what she went through in her personal life, i.e., divorce, having to be a single mom, having to take care of children, having to take care of a child who was going through illness, and balance what she wanted to achieve in her professional life, I think was a massive inspiration. The fact that she was able to focus on doing that despite the many challenges that were thrown her way.
No, I think it's something really worth to be proud of. I mean, it doesn't sound easy. I mean, it's a huge, totally 180-degree leap. You know, it's unrealistic leap, but somebody did it, so it's amazing. Uh, you talked about four types of energies, right? Spiritual, physical. Which one is there any dominating one, or is it all four? It's like a pie chart with equal weightage.
Sure, I would say all of them are important. So physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, they're all important. But if we have to begin with one, I would always begin with physical energy first, simply because without your health, you can't do much else. And if there's anything that the COVID pandemic taught us, is that we must stop making our health a side hustle. The healthy person will have many hopes, dreams, and wishes, but the sick only have one. And so putting our physical energy first gives us a good platform to then focus on the other three dimensions.
Uh, uh, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's a bit debatable for me, but I think it's fine because sometimes I think that maybe kind of a spiritual one is more important because it starts with your mind and goes into your body. Your thoughts translate into actions which your body follows. So I think I was more coming from that point of view, but you're saying that it's the physical, which is the starting point.
Yeah, I think when it comes to energy, because if people in today's world are looking for a way to feel more energized, if they focus on the spiritual first, for many it can be quite difficult. What does it mean to be more spiritually energized? Do I have to go and find what my purpose is? Do I have to quit my job? For many people, the spiritual side is not an overnight journey. Whereas on the physical energy side, I mean, you can go do a workout right now. It's more immediate. So you get a feeling of energy a lot quicker. And that's why I think addressing that gives you an insight and a very quick introduction to what it would be like when you have more energy in all those different areas.
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense. It actually makes sense. You know, who inspires you, Simon? I mean, just a personal thing, like who inspires you? Any business leader, any philosopher?
Yeah, so many people inspire me. I don't have one particular person because the way I think about it is whoever inspires me, whether it's speakers, writers, thinkers, visionaries, I like to draw different things from each of them. So, for example, if I look at Steve Jobs, what I loved about Steve Jobs is his ability to create stories for the products that he sold. You know, Apple was not the inventor of a lot of the things that they sell, yet they were able to dominate every market that they launched in simply because Steve Jobs knew how to sell a product. He was able to sell a product through the use of story. So I love the way that Steve presented every time he launched a product on stage. If I look at the speaking industry, I look up to Simon Sinek a lot because of what he has achieved with his work and his ability to take quite complex topics and subjects and to simplify them in a way that anybody can understand. If I look at the coaching industry, then I think the likes of Marshall Goldsmith, Michael Bungay Stanier, those individuals are inspirational to me because of what they have achieved, but also the impact they have had as coaches. So for me, lots of different people influence me at different points. And I think it is important to open our mind to be inspired by anything, whether it's a place, a person, or a different medium that has had some sort of impact on the way we think.
No, even the story which you told me about one of the students who went, was invited by you, and that is also very inspiring.
Exactly. So I think inspiration can come from anywhere. We just have to have the humility to be open to be inspired by anything. And I think when we do, those inputs of inspiration, if you will, end up giving us more ideas. You know, because we look at how someone's doing something, we work out, well, what can I take away from that? What's the lesson I can take from that? And then we apply it in our own way, i.e., over time, we end up designing our own philosophy for living. So there will be the Simon way of living, and of course, there'll be the Rajiv way of living. But how we arrive at that philosophy is driven by the influences that we have in our way of thinking.
I think on this, just a random question again, I'm just going through the side door again to you, is destiny. You talked about Simon Sinek. I hear him, not so much by the way, but yeah, I hear him. And Steve Jobs, I mean, obviously with Steve Jobs, I kind of admire more Elon Musk more, but Elon Musk says a lot of nutty things as well. Now, destiny, does it fix anywhere? Does it appeal to you? Like these people were meant to do this, and not whatever hard work I do today. You take my clock backwards. I find my gift, and whatever I do, there is one Steve Jobs. So, does the destiny fit into your framework anywhere, or does it come?
So I guess the first question I would ask back, Rajiv, if I may, is what do you mean in terms of destiny fitting in? And what way did you have in mind?
Destiny, I'm just saying, is that there are some people meant to do things.
Mm,
It's been pre-scripted for them.
mm.
So for a Steve Jobs, is it pre-scripted to be a Steve Jobs? We're talking about purpose, vision, values.
Yeah. I think I think to some extent there are elements of destiny being pre-scripted. For example, we are all born with different skills and talents and gifts. There'll be some things that come naturally to you that will not come naturally to me, and vice versa. So I think to some degree, some things are pre-scripted. If you happen to be born quite short, then of course you're not born or pre-scripted to play in the basketball tournaments because you are at a height disadvantage. So naturally, there'll be some things that work for you and some things that work against you. So I think there is an element of that. However, there is also the element of choice. You will have moments of inspiration throughout your life. Somebody might come up to you and you have this opportunity to land on your lap. And in that moment, you have the opportunity to say yes or no. So I think that is where choice plays a role. And there is this sort of like connection between the two. Yes, you are pre-scripted by the very fact that you have a certain DNA and genetic makeup. You are meant to do something in a way that others can't do. Now, in order for you to accomplish that, you then need the element of choice. And to give an example of the element of choice, one example is, am I going to do something with that talent, or am I going to be lazy with that talent? So you will know there will be some people in this world who are so talented, yet they frustrate you because they don't do anything with that talent. And there'll be other people who are really talented and they are using that talent so much and they're sharing that talent with the world. So I think there's an element of pre-scripted destiny and there's also an element of choice. Are you choosing to use those gifts that you were born with, or are you choosing not to use them?
Okay, nice. I think last question, Simon. This conversation is really interesting. Can go on for hours. But, as I said that I was reading Tim Ferriss' book and question of successful person. Everybody was different, but I think inspiration, it can come from different sources, as we discussed. But if you talk about one successful person, who is that successful person according to you? Is there a name? It could be a father, it could be a mother. It doesn't have to be somebody who's a billionaire. Who is a successful person according to you?
Yeah, to be fair, and again, the way I would answer this question is that anybody who is living the life that they want to live, doing the work that they want to do, is a success to me. And it doesn't matter if that person is a billionaire, a millionaire, or somebody working the job that they absolutely love. And they wake up every day looking forward to Monday, looking forward to Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. If they are living the life they want and they are achieving the goals they set for themselves, that's success for me. Anyone who does that is success in my eyes. That's how I would answer the question, Rajiv.